welcome back to my channel. My name's Rebecca, and this is my January wrap-up. So in January, I read 12 books. Of those 12 books, there were 9 sports romances, 2 mafia romance, and 1 fantasy. Now for the stars breakdown, how I rated those, I had 1 3-star, 4 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, and 2 4.5-star books. I'm still hunting for that elusive 5-star, and I'm hoping February will bring it to me. So let's dive into the books that I read in January. First up is Owned by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This is a book about the Irish Mafia. A girl goes into the local big tech company, gets a job, they pay super well, and all she has to do is man the front desk. And she's so excited because her and her mom have been struggling, and her dad just had, I think, a heart attack, and she's really worried about him. Her parents aren't together, so we often see her going between her mom's place and her dad's place to, visit them, take care of them, do what she needs to do. And her dad is begging her to quit her job. He's like, please go find a job literally anywhere else. But he won't tell her why he's so adamant against it. And we come to find out that her dad is in the mafia. She always thought he was a traveling salesman, but he wasn't. He was the mafia's, I think, greatest enforcer. And the guy that she's working for is the head of the Irish Mafia. There is a content warning, for a lot of things because it's a mafia romance, so obviously look those up. But there's one specifically I want to talk about for sexual assault, and this is a minor spoiler, but I think for a lot of us who read this, it's one we need to know. There is a guy who's kind of a predator in the office. I say kind of, he's definitely a predator. And he, I guess if we're gonna this is so weird, but I guess if we're gonna grade the different rates of assault, it's like putting his hand on her knee and doing stuff like that makes her uncomfortable, but he hasn't forced her to, but there is a scene where he does try, and I will just say he is not successful. Take that for what you will, engage with this carefully. If it's too much for you, there are plenty of other books out there that do not include that are mafia romances. But I gave that one, I believe, 4 stars. It was relatively short too. It was under 300 pages, but it still felt like a decently developed story, and I enjoyed most of it, other than obviously those few scenes. Next, I tried to continue my experience with the series. I don't know what the series is called, but it's The Deal, The Mistake, The Score, that series. I had read The Deal back in December, and it was fine. I read The Mistake in January, second book of the year, and wow, has my reading ever been lower? No, that was a terrible experience. I gave it 3 stars. I think mostly because I'm trying really hard to not have any 2 or 2.5-star reads this year, and I really should have, because John Logan, what a disappointment you are, sir. The Mistake follows John Logan, who has been crushing on, I think her name was Hannah. Yeah, they called her Wellesley through the first book, but it's Hannah, which is his best friend's girlfriend. And he thinks he likes her, is heartsick over her, can't stand to watch her be all over his best friend because they live across the hall from each other in this hockey house. So he decides, he's going to make himself scarce. He's going on runs. He's hooking up with literally any girl who will offer herself to him. And he runs into this freshman, Grace, and ends up hooking up with her. And she fakes it. And I don't think he realized it in the moment, but he, later is thinking about it. And he's like, oh, shit, that's never happened to me before. So he goes back and tries to, rectify that. But then afterwards, it's kind of thoughtless, and he feels bad. He tries to talk to her again, and she's just like, I don't want anything to do with you. Please leave me alone. And he spends, a year trying to get her back, but she is also very aware of how he feels about his best friend's girl, and she's like, I'm not here to be a replacement for her. That's not, I deserve more than that, and which she definitely did. It was fine. It wasn't great. Honestly, a lot of reading it, I was just like, why do people love this series? I do not understand. So then the book afterwards, The Score, I gave 3.5 stars. And you know what? You guys have been raving about Dean De Laurentiis, and I'm going to be a blasphemer here, and I'm like, he's not that great. He's not. He's fine. And honestly, if this was 2015 when I was reading this, maybe I would have felt differently. But I personally think he gets such high ratings because John Logan is so bad that after suffering through that and then going and reading the score afterwards, of course you're going to give that 5 stars because he's so much better than John, but he's still not great. He's still not great. Allie, who's Hannah's best friend, again, girl from the first book, breaks up with her on-again, off-again boyfriend. And he keeps, like, texting her, showing up at the apartment, like, trying to get her back. And she always takes him back. Like, or she had always taken him back previously, but she's very determined, like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not falling into his trap again. I don't want to be with him. But she also knows that as soon as he starts begging and telling her how pretty she is and that he loves her and that he made a mistake, she's just going to take him back. So she calls Hannah and she's like, I need to go somewhere. I can't. He's going to show up here again and I'm just going to take him back and I can't do it. And she's like, just go stay at the hockey house. We're on a trip, but we'll be back in a couple of days. I think John Logan's supposed to be there, or one of the Johns, because there's 2 Johns that live there, and then Dean. And so she goes to the house, and Dean is entertaining some ladies in the living room because that man loves public sex. Doesn't read his text saying that Allie's coming over, and she comes over. He's like, you're ruining my evening, because the other girls leave, and she's like, well, whatever, like, you should have checked your text. Like, I'm not going back to my place. I'm staying here. They consume some substances together and wake up naked next to each other, and they're just like, oh shit. And Dean's like, man, I did the one thing they told me not to do, because Graham's like, I'll beat your ass if you sleep with Allie. And she's like, no one needs to know. No one needs to know that we slept together. Absolutely no one needs to know. But then they start hanging out. Dean the whole time is like, I would like to do that again. That was fun. Best sex of my life. And she's like, hard pass. Hard pass. But watch this, like, shitty French telenovela with me. And so they hang out a lot, and then eventually they end up together. I gave it 3.5 stars, but again, I probably would downgrade it to a 3-star if I'm being really honest with myself. I don't get it. I don't get it. So after that, I read The Keeper. This is one of those books where an Instagram reel must have gotten me, because I would not have picked this up on my own. I believe I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. It follows Easton Hayes, who is a professional hockey player, and Maddie, I forget her last name. She's the heiress to something. She's in this big, rich family. They've known each other for literally, I think, their whole lives. They went through a very traumatic experience together when Maddie was like 14 or 15, I think. And he's a couple of years older than her. She also has always had the biggest crush on him. And then he obviously, I think he developed one, but initially I don't think he really had one because she was just so much younger than him. But then after that traumatic experience, like, he always like had this feeling of needing to take care of her. But I think after that, it kind of transitioned into him also seeing her slightly differently and being really into her. They end up in Vegas together. She's on a girls' trip. I don't know if he's there for hockey or for some other reason. Anyway, the whole group goes out, gets very drunk, and they end up married. Maddie wakes up the next morning and she's like, why is there a ring on my finger, and why am I sleeping in bed with Easton Hayes? Like, what is going on? And he's like, and she's like, I want a divorce. I want to know this. Like, this is so crazy. And he's like, I will grant you that when you remember why we get married, or why we got married. And if you still want it, then I will grant you that. But I will not grant you that until then. And so it's us watching them deal with that, essentially. It was fine. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. Probably wouldn't pick up another book from that author, honestly. And then next I went a very unhinged route. And I picked up Dawn by S.J. Tilley. This also got to me via an Instagram reel, but this was great. This one was great. That man is so unhinged. So unhinged. Check all the content warnings for this one, because there's some, I think, consenting non-consent, maybe some dubious consent. He is a mastermind of things, so he's just plotting the whole time, but you think he's just being this romantic partner. He bumps into this girl in the airport. Her name is Val, and I think she's a plus-size main character, and he like breaks her backpack or something and offers to buy her a new one, and they're like, I don't know where they are in the airport, but it's the airport, so nothing's going to be a normal price, right? He buys her this expensive backpack, apologizes, and then they're on the same flight sitting next to each other, which in the moment feels like kismet, but we learn later some alternate facts as to what's going on there. Have the best hookup once the plane lands, And then they go their separate ways, but they have each other's numbers, and then a texting relationship kind of starts because they live on opposite sides of the country from each other. Val goes to Vegas for a work thing, or maybe it was like a friend's bachelorette or something, and she asked, she's like, on the off chances, she's like, what are the chances you're in Vegas right now for work? He's like, oh, I'm totally in Vegas right now for work. She's like, no, are you serious? He's like, yeah. She's like, we should hang out. He's like, great. And literally after that text conversation ends, he picks up the phone. He's like, I need my plane to take me to Vegas right now. Right now. So he goes to Vegas, meets up with her, gets her drunk. They get married, because this is the month of me reading books that do that, because there's like 3, I think. What we also learn is that Val's older brother is in the mafia. She does not know that. She knows that now, because the man she just married is also in the mafia, but in a different one. I can't remember which one, but essentially her brother runs something called the Alliance, and it's the different mafia groups coming together. So I think it's the Irish mafia, I don't know if Dom is head of the Mexican. I can't remember, but it's them and then Nero, and they're all in the same deal. And Dom marries her to get into the Alliance because her brother would not grant him access before. And shit is chaotic, but it's a chaotic good time. It's a good time. This man is a walking red flag, but is he? Maybe he's a little bit of a pink flag, you know? All right, next up is Fresh Meat by Jasmine Miller. This book for me in the first half felt like what I wanted out of Caught Up by Liz Tomford, like vibe-wise. Jace is a newly single dad. He has I think 18-month-old son, or maybe he's 2, that he did not know about. He had a hookup with this woman when he was living, I think, in Seattle, and she got pregnant. He left, but he didn't know, right? Like, he had no idea. And she didn't know his last name or even really who he was, so she couldn't reach out. And then she had an inkling of who she thought he was because he's an Olympic swimmer, but then she wasn't sure, and then she gets really sick. And I think she gets cancer, so content warning for that. But all that to say, kid ends up with Jace eventually, and he's an Olympic swimmer, which means he leaves his house at 7 a.m., literally swims almost all day, comes home for lunch, I think goes back to swim some more. That's just his job, which isn't really conducive to having a child, specifically when you're a single parent. So he hires Millie reluctantly. He does not like her when they first interview, but his mom is like, you need help. And I can't, his mom still works. I think she's a professor at a university, and she comes to help as much as she can, but she's like, I still have to go to my job. I can't stay here all the time. So he hires her. Millie worked on a kids TV show, so she knows a lot about child development. So even though she's kind of quirky and wears these loud outfits, he's fine, obviously, you're good with him. He immediately warmed up to her, which is a thing that his son hasn't historically done. And, it's a classic single dad Danny romance. The third act conflict in this one really bothered me, mostly because I felt like the communication on the first half of the book was done so well that it felt out of character for it to not happen in the second half. So this one ended up, I think, being a 3-star read for me. And then we have Sticks and Stones by S. Massery and S.J. Silvis. This is a dark hockey romance, bully romance. Ren Davis is this girl who has been in and out of foster care. Her foster brother is one of her best friends, and she just, he treats her like it's his, she's his little sister. They're very close. She loves his parents. And she would go back and forth between her dad's house when the court didn't take her away from him, and then when they did, to their house. And in high school, her dad asks her to deliver a package that she knows is drugs, because her dad is a known meth addict, I believe, but he also makes and sells it. And the cops get called at school, and she dumps the drugs into the back of the truck of her brother's best friend, because her brother's best friend, I think his name is Stone. Yeah. He's a rich kid. I think his dad's a defense attorney, and she just knows, if they find this on me, not only am I going to juvie, but I'm never going to college. My life is going to be terrible, and I'll be stuck with my meth addict dad. But if they find this in Stone's car, really he's only going to get a slap on the wrist. His dad's going to get him out of it. So that's what she does. She dumps the drugs and kind of goes from there. There's a time jump in there in college. I don't know if she like lost her housing. Something happens. She ends up staying at the hockey house with her brother and his teammates. But what she doesn't know is that Stone just transferred to that college too. He arrives at the house like 2 hours after her and then realizes that they have to share a room. And Stone's like, what the fuck? No, I need my room. Like, we're not doing this. And her brother's like, she literally has nowhere else to go. So, and I'm not kicking her out. That's not happening. And so they end up rooming together, and Stone continues to bully her. He's like, if you're going to be in my space and make my life miserable after you essentially ruined my life in high school, I'm going to ruin your life. But what he doesn't realize is some of the actions he's taking give away her location, and that was a big part of her safety because of her dad. So things get very tumultuous from there. He feels bad, though, ends up taking care of her because she starts having active like nightmares and night terrors. He stays up all night with her. It transitions from bully to just very sweet, very fast. It's a ride. This book is wild. Shit is happening left and right. So if you just need something to like take your mind off of whatever you're doing and to like suck you in for an afternoon, 10 out of 10 recommend. I gave this 4 stars. And keeping with the hockey romance theme, because again, I said I read 9 sports romances this month, I dove into the Why Choose land of Lauren Blakely, and I read Puck Yes. Our female main character, Ivy, gets dumped by her boyfriend because he deserves better. Lo and behold, he's been cheating with her boss this whole time, and her boss obviously knew who her boyfriend was and didn't say anything and just was fucking her man. Terrible. They then get engaged, and like their engagement announcement was like the trashiest thing I've ever heard of in my life. I will not spoil that for you. Please laugh out loud when you read it because my God, just so trashy. And she's in fashion, and so she decides, like, okay, well, I've been obviously running my boss's stuff for years. I know how this works. I've always wanted to build my own brand as far as it comes to, like, fashion reporting and things. So she decides that she's going to do that. They actually offer to have her cover their wedding. They think they're helping her out. They're full of themselves. She sees it as an opportunity to grow her business because she's like, all these eyes are going to be on this wedding. I'm going to do it. She runs into this hot neighbor. And I don't know if they get stuck in the elevator or if they're just like waiting for a long time for it. But he offers to be her +1 to the wedding. He's like, you don't need to go through that alone. That sounds sucky. Like, I'll help you. Lo and behold, that man is a hockey player on the team her brother used to play for, who she is now a mascot for to supplement her income because she's getting her new business off the ground. And she's like, I still have bills to pay. I need to be able to live life. So she's doing that. And yeah, so he now realizes like, oh shit, okay, well, if she's a mascot, I think there's technically a no fraternizing clause or something. So like they're trying to tiptoe around that. But the hockey captain has always liked her. And the only reason he didn't try to date her before is because her brother was on the team and knew he would just beat his ass. And so he's like, her brother's gone. I still think she's hot. I know she thinks I'm attractive. I'm going after this. But then he realizes that new guy, who also happens to be one of his best friends, they played college hockey together, likes her too. And what we learn is that they've shared women before. Not in a relationship sense, but they have shared women before. The team ends up in Vegas for, I think, some away games. And as a hazing to the new guy, they're like, oh yeah, it's tradition for the new guy to find a girl in the bar and then go get married. But no worries, you get it annulled like first thing in the morning. Like we literally book the appointment before you even go to the chapel. Like it's fine. So he enlists Ivy. He's like, Ivy, let's get married. And she's like, great, let's do it. They go get married. And then they find out like, oh no, that's a joke. We've literally never done that before. Happy hazing. So they get married and their chemistry has been great this whole time. And they're kind of like making out after their wedding. And hockey captain walks in and is like literally watching them, and she's getting like more turned on by it. And he's like, does this excite you? Like the fact that there's 3 of us in here or whatever. And she's like, yeah. And so then they go down that path together, and it's a whole thing. It honestly ended up being a really sweet story. It is not as salacious as it sounds in the beginning. Like there are definitely those elements, but for the most part, it is just a sweet love story. And I enjoyed that so much that I literally finished it and then picked up the next one, Thoroughly Pucked, which actually is my favorite of this series. I gave it, I think, 4.5 stars. Aubrey is left at the altar, not really at the altar, it's even right before. Her fiance comes in and is like, listen, I have not had a lot of sex. I've had really bomb-ass sex with you. And while I know we'll continue to have that, I would like to stick my dick elsewhere. So we're not getting married. And she's like, what? She had already been having some apprehension and was like actually trying to tell her friends, like, I don't think it's just cold feet. Like, I don't think I should marry him. But gets interrupted. He walks in to say all of that. And him being the coward that he is, just bounces. Doesn't tell the guests, doesn't tell his parents, just leaves. So her brother's like, I will take care of this. Do not worry. He pulls two of the ushers who happens to be he's the agent for the two of these guys. They're hockey players. And he's like, you need to get my sister out of here. Take her somewhere. Don't care where. But like, get her out of here. She does not need to sit through this. So they hop in the getaway car that was meant for after the ceremony and just drive off together. And she's, I don't want to say distraught because she's really not. It's just more of like stunned, I think. And then they're just like, how do we help her? Because like jilted bride, like that's like there should be a lot of tears. Like what's going on? How do we help her deal with this? And she's like, actually, I was gonna end it too. But then she does get really sad because, you know, you had a plan for your life and things have changed. But she realizes that the honeymoon is not only non-refundable, but she basically paid for it. And she's like, I'm still going on this fucking trip. And they're like, we'll go with you. Like, you don't have to do that alone. So they go on the trip together and then sparks fly. And it was a great time. Again, 4.5 stars. Alrighty, we are into the last 3 books. I read the first book in the Crescent City series, House of Earth and Blood. I won't spend too much time on this because I have a whole like 40-minute long vlog of me reading that. If you want to see it, I'll put it in the placard up here. But for those of you who don't know, it follows Bryce Quinlan, who works at like this boutique, almost like collector's office / museum, and she parties all night. And a few chapters in, this massive thing happens, and she gets questioned by, I don't know, their version of the police, and they kind of think she's a suspect, but they can't prove that she did anything, so they let her go. And then one of the guys that was there for the interrogation, his name is Hunt Athalar, and he's a fallen angel who's also known for doing the governor's like dirty work of just basically being an assassin. And they're stuck together because the governor's like, okay, well, Bryce, you keep popping up near where these things are happening. And if you didn't do it, like, fine, but you're going to help us figure out what the hell is going on. And then Hunt is assigned to just like essentially protect her, but also like kind of watch out and see if anything else is going on. And the book's 800 pages long, and there's so many other storylines going on, but it would be very spoiler of me to tell you. So again, watch the vlog if you want to hear about those things. It is a spoiler-filled one, so keep that in mind. Alright, last 2 books were hockey romances. This next one was my favorite book of the month. It is Face Off by Tegan Hunter. I love Lucas Lawson so much. So much. He is kind of the known playboy of this team. He has the nickname Lawless Lawson. I wrote, known playboy, actual baby girl, because this man is so soft and sweet. I love him. He's so precious. He finds a puppy on Christmas Eve, and she's very clearly malnourished and needs help. And he's like, holy shit, like, I got to get this dog to a vet. Looks at the nearest vet clinic. He's like walking in the snow in Canada to get her there. And the vet clinic he walks into is owned by Rory Sinclair, who's the sister of the girl from the first book. And Rory cannot stand Lucas. And Lucas is very much of the, it really turns me on when she's angry at me and yells at me. Like, loves her. He's so into her. So she helps him with this dog. And he's like, my hockey season's about to pick back up. Like, we're just on Christmas break. What do I do with a dog? Like, I'm going to be gone for like days at a time. He's trying to figure it out. And she offers to essentially help him deal with that until he can figure out like a long-term plan. And in the course of her like seeing his life, how he is with Daisy the dog, and as she's like learning about him, she realizes that he's not as lawless as his nickname would make him seem, and she starts falling for him. He's always liked her. The banter is great. The spicy scenes are great. There weren't too many of them, which was nice. There were plenty of times where either one of them were being vulnerable, and there could have been the choice to kind of overrun that with a sex scene and just kind of run away from the feelings, but Tegan Hunter stayed right there in the feelings, and it was a great time. And then the last book I read this month was Wildcat by Rebecca Janchak. This was my book club's pick for the month, and I don't actually know when we're going to talk about it, but I gave this one, I think, 4 stars. I had a good time, but then I also felt a little let down. I'll explain. So Leo Lohan is a star NHL player, but he also, because he got recruited for hockey, he played in college. His sophomore year decides to leave and go pro. And because of that, he's like, he doesn't want to not finish his education, but he's also a pro hockey player and their schedules are grueling. So what he does is, I think he takes one online class during like regular like fall and spring semesters, and then he'll take one or two in the summer and will like physically be on campus for the summer ones because that's when hockey's on a break. So he's at a college bar with his buddies from his recent finance class that just ended. They're kind of celebrating the end of that summer class. He runs into this girl who is a terrible barback, and she's actually kind of getting fired as he's like watching her, and she's hanging out at the bar because her friend still works there and I think he's supposed to take her home. And he shoots a shot, and she's like, yeah, let's hook up. Let's have a good time. She has no idea who he is. No idea who he is. And we later find out that he has no idea who she is because she turns out to be his coach's daughter, which is always just a fun little forbidden romance. We love that. So, yeah, they hook up. He doesn't say anything for a week, not because he's being a dick, but because they literally hook up, I think, the night before preseason camp is supposed to start. So that's when you go into the arena every day for like 2 days. You're working a crazy schedule. And at the end of that week, the coach hosts a barbecue at his house. And that's how he finds out that the girl he just hooked up with, who he thinks is his dream girl, is his coach's daughter. So he is now begging for another chance because he's like, I swear I'm not some hockey douche. I was going to text you. In fact, he's like, but I knew... He's like, I didn't want to text you and, like, it just be for, like, a booty call. Like, I actually really want to get to know you. I really like you. But I knew that if I texted you, I would immediately want to see you. And realistically, it would be, like, 9 or 10 p.m. And hooking up is all we would do. And he eventually wears her down. They start dating. But she doesn't want to tell her dad yet. And so it's a little bit secretive. They had a really cute relationship. I appreciated how much space he gave her. She had just come off of a big life change at the opening of the book. And at times would be really down on herself. And he was just like, I know I'm a professional hockey player, but I do not have my life together in the way that you think I do. And everything is not perfect. And everything does not have to be perfect. And all you need to do essentially is show up. Just show up and try. That's all I'm asking. And there are just plenty of moments where he could have been frustrated with her for some of the choices that she made, but instead met her with kindness. And I just thought that was great. So those are the 12 books that I read this month. I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm going to read for February, but I'm terrible at TBR, so I'm not even going to start to make one, if I'm being very honest. So tell me what you read in the comments below, and I will see you in another video soon.